Hey, this is 167, and I'm just starting off with an observation. It's an observation that pisses me off, but I'm not sure that it's something we need to argue about. The deal is that every time Trump goes on TV for a coronavirus briefing, his approval rating over the next day or so goes up by a tenth of a percentage point. His approval rating was the highest ever back in April when he was having daily coronavirus briefings. It got up to 45.8% approval. And then he quit going on TV. And over the next 2.5 months, it dropped it dropped 5.8% to 40.0. And then he started going back on TV again every day. And it got as high in the past, earlier today, it got up to 41.4. So he recovered almost 1.5% just by going on TV every day, which, as somebody who doesn't like Trump, annoys me. But he's figured out he or his people obviously know this, and I feel like he'll be having a press conference. It's exactly 3 months until the election. I think he's going to have a press conference every day. Maybe not on weekends, but every weekday. That's my observation.
Yeah, nothing to argue about. And uh, I think I know why. I mean, it's because it sounds like he's trying to do things rather than having the press, say that he's inactive or golfing or doesn't care about human beings or whatever. Um, I Unless you have more to say about that topic,
Well,
I'd like
I mean,
to.
we could have an argument. I don't really want to have an argument. I think it's as, I think, I mean, I think he got a lot of votes in 2016 because people knew him from TV, from The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice, and I think he gets a certain amount of approval just for showing up on TV.
Well, I mean, since you said that, I'll move on and say that Biden is actually the reverse. Um,
Yeah.
I've listened to, instead of the sound bites that the press that are trying to protect him, they'll take the 25 seconds or the 20 seconds of a speech where he sounds vigorous and thoughtful, and they'll just play that. But I've often listened to the whole speech that it came from, and he sounds like one of those people that only has lucid moments. So the more he goes on TV and shows himself, the more the American people realize that he's um, a doddering old fool, and that even if you agree with his politics, he's not going to be the one making the decisions. It'll be his people, uh, whoever the vice president is, people backing him. And I've never seen a presidential election where the standards were that low, where people said that, we don't care if the president is completely, well, almost incapacitated because we like his policies. That may be too far for the American people to go, and that does seem to be what happens when he shows himself.
All right. So I got two things to say. One is I'm okay with a president who appoints a competent cabinet. Um, I mean, because there are people in Trump's cabinet that I mean, I, we don't have to fight about his cabinet. I can name a couple specific people who drive me crazy. Um, Betsy DeVos, but I feel like Biden's cabinet would have better people. Like one of Trump's cabinet members actually stole from my family. Um, the guy who used to run, Wilbur Ross, who used to run Invesco, which is a mutual fund company. And I don't want to go into detail, but like we had a mutual fund through them that did shitty, and it turns out he was taking extra fees. But anyway, um, so thing one, I'm okay with a good cabinet. Thing two is I've listened to, I don't know, probably 30 or 35 minutes of Biden here and there, not just sound bites, but where he's calling into a show or he's making a speech or taking questions from the press. And I've been looking for, doddery moments to see if, I mean, we all heard about that. He told some story about corn pop, some weird thing about how he had blonde hair on his legs and kids like to rub his legs, so we've heard about the weird shit, but I haven't noticed that like a whole lot of lapsy shit going on. He does have a stutter, so occasionally he will pause to come down on a word instead of a stutter, but I haven't found him sounding out of it. On the other hand, um, my side of things likes to present Trump as, super duper out of it and play the sound bite where he mispronounces a word. And, like there was a thing that, like, he had a bruise on the back of one hand over the weekend, and people were arguing, well, he must have been snuck over to Walter Reed. Um, where they stuck an IV in him and nobody, and instead of golfing, and and so we hear the shit from both sides. But when I listen to Trump, uh, Trump sounds I don't you know Trump sounds as lucid as he's ever sounded to me. So I kind of think both of them are most of the time keeping their shit together, considering their ages.
Um, well, look, if you're wondering in the audience right now whether Biden is lucid, there's a 15-minute speech uh, where Biden was talking about his hairy legs. All you have to do is type in the hairy leg speech, and he starts talking about how he was talking to young black children. And while he was talking to them, he said that he had, when he was young, he was a lifeguard, and the children used to like to rub his hairy legs when he was in the pool. And then he started to talk about how he liked to have children sitting on his lap. And it meandered for quite a bit. Now, Rick, don't interrupt because I know your mouth is quivering. Um, my point is that if you've heard him make this speech, you couldn't vote for him because even if you didn't hear anything else, even if everything sounded relatively normal, no person that no person without if a person didn't have dementia, they would not have made these statements. You don't. It doesn't take a rocket science. If you've been a rocket scientist to figure this out, you just have to watch the 15-minute speech, and he's clearly meandering. If he doesn't have dementia, he may be on a drug of some kind, but he has memories coming back to him from childhood or from 50 years ago that don't make any sense. And I'm not saying that he likes to have kids sit on his laps because he's a pervert. I don't even have to say that. I just say my standpoint is that there's something wrong there. And
Right.
if you want to, you can go over 50 speeches and hear all the Biden gaffes, things
Yeah, because I'm sure there's a
where he would,
website devoted to every stupid thing he's fucking said.
right,
Like you
but
could
uh,
go
but
through our
but
show and you could put together a solid, I don't know, 2.5 hours of all the stupid shit that I've said.
no, but you couldn't because if anybody was to listen to the full hour of our show, they would see that they may not agree with us and they may not think our jokes are funny, but they wouldn't think we were demented or senile.
Well, but I've
Whereas
got, when you mentioned the hairy leg thing, I've got a story all teed up that's like it's a memory from 1978, so 42 years ago. Should I tell
well,
my Biden story?
maybe you're qualified to be president too. I think that's the only thing that
All
would
right,
prove,
let me
Rick.
let me tell my
But
Biden
but
story from
um,
1978.
I guess I can't stop you. The
All right, so
irrepressible Rick Rosner. Go ahead.
all right, so in 1978, I moved from Boulder, Colorado, where I was going to high school, living with my mom and my stepdad, to Albuquerque to go to high school while living with my dad and my stepmom. And at my back in Boulder, I was nerdy, but I started lifting weights to get all like burly so girls might like me, but it didn't work. Some voice is happening in the background. Is that a
That's someone with that our director is listening to.
okay? All right. So anyway,
All right.
all right. So there was director, but anyway, so I couldn't get a girlfriend in Boulder, so I moved to Albuquerque to see if my new burly self could get a girlfriend um, while going to high school. And I was 18. I just turned 18, and my little sister in Albuquerque was 10 years younger, so she's 8, and I like to carry her around on my shoulders occasionally because I was a big burly guy now and I could carry an 8-year-old on my shoulders. Made me feel manly, which is an indication of how wimpy I actually was. That like giving somebody a fucking piggyback ride made me feel manly. Um, so one time I'm walking my little sister back home. She's riding on my shoulders. She gets tired of riding on my shoulders, and she climbs off my head and she grabs my face for leverage and she smashes my glasses into my face, um, which which hurt and also fucked up the glasses. And in my anger, I yelled, "Allison, you fuckhead!" And then I'm like, "Oh shit," because you're not supposed to call your little sister a fuckhead. And she went and told my stepmom, and now my stepmom was interested in sullying my reputation because I knew she was having an affair, um, but my dad didn't. And my stepmom was interested in like making me seem untrustworthy, um, in case I happened to spill the beans that maybe I wouldn't be trusted. Um, so
Wow, this
Alice,
is quite a wait, wait. I'll let you finish the story. I'm
all
sorry.
right.
Go ahead.
So Allison told my stepmom. So my stepmom proceeded to tell everybody that I'd called my little sister a fuckhead, because that's a terror. That's a stain on one's reputation, and the stain grew deeper when my stepmom's mom had never heard the term before and asked what it meant to call somebody a fuckhead. And my stepmom told her mom it meant that I wanted to fuck her.
Oh,
And long story short, I didn't last too long in Albuquerque. I ended up going back to Boulder after just a few months. Um, anyway, a memory from 42 years ago.
how did you find out that your stepmother was having an affair?
Well, I shouldn't talk too much about this, even though it was 42 years ago. I mean, because, you know,
Is
but
everyone dead?
no, not everyone is dead. No, some people are still around. So
There's some legal issues there. You may want to
I don't know. Because nobody listens to this fucking
you
thing.
may need to edit that because
We'll
if
we'll
you
maybe
start
take a look
talking
at it,
about people
but
having a
I don't know. Do people still fucking worry about something that happened in 1978?
I don't know. I'm just saying when I was writing my book, um, I used a model in my book. I did a drawing of a model. He was a very handsome guy. And I said, no, this drawing took me 10 hours. It was a lot of work for this model, Scott. And he's a handsome guy. And now that we're done, he can finally go back to his housewives. Anyway, the editor uh, left every joke in the book that I wrote except for that one. And I said, what was wrong with that one? Because the editor was pretty hip. And
Yeah.
she said, well, we can get sued from if people know that Scott is messing around with their wives. And I mean, I could see that. It's sort of like, so, when you announce in public that someone was having an affair, you have to be, you have to, everybody has to be dead before you can get away with that,
I
I
know,
think.
I'll talk it over with the director and we'll see because like you know I I, I don't know. But
Well, but
anyway,
all right.
the reason that I knew
One
is
last question.
because
Yeah, why did you know?
she told me that and then she thought better of it.
Why the fuck would she tell you?
Well, she said, you know, she said that she'd
Very
had
bad
the
form.
affair, but she wasn't
Very,
having the affair anymore.
very
And
bad form.
but
One
also
never
like
tells.
it was highly understandable that she'd have an affair considering my dad. See, because the deal is my dad, who he's been passed away for about 16 months, um, was a good guy once he got over being married to my mom. So that still left, 55 years or more of him being a pretty decent guy, but a workaholic. Also a handsome guy, much better looking as as a younger man than I am or was. Um, but a workaholic, a guy who would work 16 hours a day. And it was understandable that my stepmom, who was, you know, quite a bit younger than him and going stir crazy the way anybody in Albuquerque would go because it's fucking Albuquerque, um, that he would come home. I used to get really mad at him because I knew this affair was going on, but I'd been sworn to secrecy. He'd come home at like, I don't know, 11 at night after going to work at, at some fucking horrible hour in the morning.
As an
And
accountant. As an
yeah, as a
accountant.
CPA, he was a, he was a fucking, he was one of the greatest accountants in the history of New Mexico. At one point, he had a solo practice with 500 clients and never lost an audit. Great accountant and also a great guy in a bit he's a guy, a really friendly, gregarious guy, a guy that you would want to have as your accountant, not only because he'd do a great job on your taxes, but also because he was a great guy to uh, if you had to visit he made visiting him a pleasure. Um, but he would come home after like fucking 16 hours of work, and this was a split level house in the style of the 70s. And he would come home and he wouldn't go up the half floor to the bed that he was supposed to be sharing with his wife. He would fall asleep he'd curl up on the couch. And I used to get mad that he wouldn't go upstairs, just that half flight of stairs, and claim his marital bed. And what got me extra pissed was that the room had a 3 cushion couch that was 8 feet long. and a two cushion couch that was 5.5 feet long. He couldn't even fucking make it over to the three cushion couch so he could lie down, not curled up. No, he'd stagger over to the two cushion couch and just curl up on that in his fucking white pants because it was the 70s and his white patent leather shoes with tassels. And it's like, what the fuck? So I could understand the affair. And it
And that's
also, that's
why
how I
and
turned
that's
into a,
why you never and that's why you never told him.
well, no, because she
Uh,
made me promise that I wouldn't tell before she told me what she told me. And I'm a sap
uh,
that way, where, anyway, that's why I became a stripper. Because at 18, I see my dad, a handsome guy, being cuckolded. And I'm like, well, wait, if my dad, a handsome guy, can't keep a woman, then how can I, a less handsome guy, ever get and or keep a woman? So I need to become a stripper. I need to be taken home by jaded older ladies. We'd call them cougars today, and be taught amazing sex tricks that I can use to gain a hold over um, any women I might get with in the future. I did not learn any sex tricks, by the way. But anyway, that's the pretty much the whole deal.
I have a theory about that, by the way.
Okay.
Just since we're educational as a show, and that is that a woman will leave you if you're lousy in bed, but she won't stay with you just because you're good in bed.
Okay.
I'm glad you were silent because that deserved a moment for people to think about it. Well, look, Rick, I think we've
You
gotten
can
far
imagine,
off
like,
track.
imagine me telling that story to a bunch of black kids when I'm running for president.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much is that's almost as bad as a policeman shooting an unarmed black man. I mean, it's just you're on,
Oh, by
that's
the way,
not
I
the
got to make
story
like
I would
that's a
tell.
reference back to, you said Biden told that story to black kids, so that's my, yeah.
Well, it was kind of a strange thing because you the whole thing had a sort of a strange racial narrative too because they were trying to show how he was down with the minorities and that he had I think this is connected to the Corn Pop where he had to face down a gangster named Corn Pop who was also of the African American persuasion. It was just kind of
Yeah.
it was just no it was I don't know if he did that in a previous speech, but there was some reason why he had to be telling them that. I think it's because they had never seen blonde hair on a leg before. That became significant to the story and the race of the audience. But
Okay.
anyway, listen, I'd like to get on to something
All right. Yeah, you've got to
else, if
think.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I got an irate letter comment on our YouTube channel from somebody that said, "Look, um, Lance, you're all wrong, and what if, I have to take care of my parents, and they are really fragile, and so I have to wear a mask, and they have to be sheltered, and everyone I meet has to wear a mask so I don't bring it home and get them with Wuhan." And I don't know if the person listens to the show that much, but I have half a dozen people I know that are in that situation. They are very fragile or are recovering from something, have poor immune systems, or And they, in some cases, have a kid at home that goes out and buys them groceries. If you, number one, if you really think that you're in that percentage that's extremely vulnerable, then by all means, shelter in place, stay at home. Um, and if you are not vulnerable because you're 20, but you still want to take care of them, then by all means, wear a mask. And all of the people I know, well, are wearing masks because in California you can't buy anything without wearing a mask. I mean, I can't fight that. As stupid as I feel doing it, um, I know that I won't be able to buy anything if I don't wear it. So, you know, what I want the viewer to understand is that 95% of the people out there are not in his situation. We're not extremely fragile and vulnerable or taking care of someone in that situation. And so I just don't think that the other 95% of the population need to have their lives turned upside down over this. Now, that's my first answer, but that doesn't take into account the information I'm about to read. Now, Rick, you told a long and bone-chilling story.
Okay.
So I think you'll allow me to read an article that takes under 7 minutes to read.
Well, wait, that's a
I'll,
long ass article, but
well, it may take less, but I've timed some of our little soliloquies, and I find that very often we go to 7 minutes just talking.
all right, as long
So
as it's not by Dan Oingo Boingo.
Rick has this colorful sobriquet for Dan Bongino. I'm not sure you could find Dan Bongino on YouTube anymore because you don't really appear to know his name. You have that quality in combination with Biden, but it's Dan Bongino who's one of the most brilliant men on in the media today, and a great asset to this country. So this article is from Newsweek, left-wing source, and I will just go right into it.
It's a broken wing source. It's one of those magazines that's not even a magazine anymore.
Well, it's online.
Yeah.
Opinion. The key to defeating COVID-19 already exists. We need to start using it. Harvey A. Risch, MD, PhD, Professor of Epidemiology, Yale School of Public Health.
You can gloss
July,
over some of the shit. Just
as Professor of Epidemiology at Yale School of Public Health, I have authored over 300 peer-reviewed publications and currently hold senior positions on the editorial boards of several leading journals. I'm usually accustomed to advocating for positions within the mainstream of medicine. So I've been flummoxed to find that in the midst of a crisis, I'm fighting for a treatment that the data fully support, but which, for reasons having nothing to do with a correct understanding of the science, has been pushed to the sidelines. As a result, tens of thousands of patients with COVID-19 are dying unnecessarily. Fortunately, the situation can be reversed easily and quickly. I am referring, of course, to the medication hydroxychloroquine. When this inexpensive oral medication is given very early in the course of illness, before the virus has had time to multiply beyond control, it is shown to be highly effective, especially when given in combination with the antibiotics azithromycin or doxycycline and the nutritional supplement zinc. On May 27th, I published an article in the American Journal of Epidemiology entitled Early Outpatient Treatment of Symptomatic High-Risk COVID-19 Patients that should be ramped up immediately as key to the pandemic crisis. That article, published in the world's leading epidemiology journal, analyzed 5 studies demonstrating clear-cut and significant benefits to treated patients, plus other very large studies that showed the medication's safety. Physicians who have been using these medications in the face of widespread skepticism have been truly heroic. They have done what the science shows is best for their patients, often at great personal risk. I myself know of 2 doctors who have saved the lives of hundreds of patients with these medications, but are now fighting state medical boards to save their licenses and reputations. The cases against them are completely without scientific merit. Since publication of my May 27th article, 7 more studies have demonstrated similar benefit. In a lengthy follow-up letter, also published by AJE, I discuss these 7 studies and renew my call for the immediate early use of hydroxychloroquine in high-risk patients. These 7 studies include an additional 400 high-risk patients treated by Dr. Vladimir Zelenko with 0 deaths, 4 studies totaling almost 500 high-risk patients treated in nursing homes and clinics across the U.S. with no deaths, a controlled trial of more than 700 high-risk patients in Brazil with significantly reduced risks of
You're frozen.
hospitalization
All right.
among 334 patients treated with hydroxychloroquine, and another study of 398 matched patients in France, also with significantly reduced hospitalization risk. Since my letter was published, even more doctors have reported to me their completely successful use. Just a little bit left. My original article in the AJE is available free online, and I encourage readers, especially physicians, nurses, physician assistants, and associates, and respiratory therapists, to search the title and read it. My follow-up letter is linked there to the original paper. Beyond these studies of individual patients, we have seen what happens in large populations when these drugs are used. These have been quote-unquote natural experiments. In the northern Brazil state of Pará, COVID-19 deaths were increasing exponentially. On April the 6th, the Public Hospital Network purchased 75,000 doses of azithromycin and 90,000 doses of hydroxychloroquine. Over the next few weeks, authorities began distributing these medications to infected individuals. Even though new cases continued to occur, on May 22nd, the death rate started to plummet and is now about 1/8 what it was at the peak. A reverse natural experiment happened in Switzerland. On May 27th, the Swiss national government banned outpatient use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19. Around June 10th, COVID-19 deaths increased 4-fold and remained elevated. On June 11th, the Swiss government revoked the ban, and on June 23rd, the death rate reverted to what it had been beforehand. People who die from COVID-19 live about 3 to 5 weeks from the start of symptoms, which makes the evidence of causal relation in these experiments strong. Both episodes suggest that a combination of hydroxychloroquine and its companion medications reduces mortality and should be immediately adopted as the new standard of care in high-risk patients. 3 more paragraphs. Why has hydroxychloroquine been disregarded? First, as we all know, the medication has become highly politicized. For many, it is viewed as a marker of political identity on both sides of the political spectrum. Nobody needs to remind them that this is not how medicine should proceed. We must judge this medication strictly on the science. When doctors graduate from medical school, they formally promise to make the health and life of their patient their first consideration, without biases of race, religion, nationality, social standing, or political affiliation. Lives must come first. Second, the drug has not been used properly in many studies. Hydroxychloroquine has shown major success when used early in high-risk people, but as one would expect for an antiviral, much less success when used late in the disease course. Even so, it has demonstrated significant benefit in large hospital studies in Michigan and New York City when started within 24 to 48 hours after admission. In fact, as inexpensive oral and widely available medications and a nutritional supplement, the combination of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, or doxycycline, and zinc are well suited for early treatment in the outpatient setting. The combination should be prescribed in high-risk patients immediately upon clinical suspicion of COVID-19 disease without waiting for results of testing. Delays in waiting before starting the medication can reduce their efficacy. I'm going to just see. There is 2 more minutes.
Well, I mean,
In fact,
haven't you made all your points? Because, I mean,
no. In fact, as inexpensive. Okay. Third, concerns have been raised by the FDA and other risks of cardiac arrhythmia, especially when hydroxychloroquine is given in combination with azithromycin. The FDA based its comments on data in its FDA Adverse Event Reporting System. This reporting system captured up to 1,000 cases of arrhythmias attributed to hydroxychloroquine use. In fact, the number is likely higher than that, since the reporting system, which requires physicians or patients to initiate contact with the FDA, appreciably undercounts drug side effects. But what the FDA did not announce is that these adverse events were generated from tens of millions of patients using hydroxychloroquine for long periods of time, often for the chronic treatment of lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. Even if the true rates of arrhythmia are tenfold higher than those reported, the harms would be minuscule compared to the mortality occurring right now in inadvertently treated high-risk COVID-19 patients. This fact is proven by an Oxford study of more than 320,000 older patients taking both hydroxy and azithromycin who had arrhythmia excess death rates of less than 9 in 100,000 users, as I cited in a paper above, a
all
new
right, all right.
paper in the journal.
There's
Okay,
this. You got to
in
be
the
almost
future,
done with this.
last paragraph. In the future, I believe this misgotten episode regarding hydroxychloroquine will be studied by sociologists of medicine as a classic example of how extra scientific factors overrode clear-cut medical evidence. But for now, reality demands a clear scientific eye on the evidence and where it points. For the sake of high-risk patients, for the sake of our parents and grandparents, for the sake of the unemployed, for our economy, and for our polity, especially those disproportionately affected, we must start treating immediately.
All right. So the doctor makes some good points and he makes some shitty points. Now, the one point, well, hydroxychloroquine as a treatment and as a subject of research is not going away in America, in that Trump just gave $765 million to restart the Kodak Corporation. Kodak used to be on the cutting edge of of cameras and film. They used to be America's #1 manufacturer of photographic film. Now you don't need film, so Kodak basically went bankrupt. Now they're getting $750 million to start over as a chemical, as a drug manufacturer for drugs to treat the COVID. And one of the drugs they're going to be making is hydroxy. Um, so so the doctors who are freaking out saying that that it's being suppressed and or no, it's still going to be studied and it's still going to be available for use in a lot of places. So and we'll find out more about it.
Let me
Um,
respond. Let me respond before you go on to your next point.
okay,
It was banned in Nevada this month,
yeah. But
this
like
week.
one of the
It's
great
banned.
and also
There
fucked
are
up
there
things
are
about America is we have 50 states with each state having a high degree of independence. So it's like having 50 different national, policy laboratories. So yeah, Nevada is not even 1% of the US population. So
Okay,
yeah,
there are Rick, I didn't get to respond. I got one sentence off.
okay, all right.
There are many places in the United States where it's banned. I don't know all the places, but I can assure you it's more than just one state. And I can assure you that doctors are refusing to give hydroxychloroquine to patients that ask for it. They're just saying no. There are but what's even more ominous is I've heard report after report of doctors saying that the pharmacy has refused to fulfill the prescription the
Well,
prescription. So they're making it very, very difficult, and they are threatening to remove the licenses of doctors. Some medical boards are doing that. So they're throwing water on it as much as humanly possible, without actually going out with and putting machine guns to people's heads. They're throwing every roadblock in the way, and the only person standing up for it in the U.S. government is Trump.